Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a place where the air is thick with dust. The rivers coil like sleepy snakes through the plains, and the sky unfolds in brilliant, endless stages of light. You're in Babylon, an ancient, sprawling, loud in some corners, eerily quiet in others. The sun is dipping low, casting honey-colored bands across the mud brick walls and ziggurats. Priests adjust their robes in the shimmering heat. Merchants call out under striped awnings, and something curious is happening all around you. People keep describing the light differently. Not just sunset, not just bright, not even glow. They've got 7 different words for light. And they use them like your grandma uses the word fine as code for very specific things. Or someone. And no, you probably won't survive this if you're expecting a simple, rational explanation. And you start to notice the textures of light not just in the sky, but in how people react to it. They gave it names like Nuru, Zemu, and Iru. The kind of light in the sky could delay a sacrifice. The wrong glow on an idol might make you cancel a wedding. And if you dared to describe the moonlight incorrectly during a festival, well, hope you didn't mind spending the night in the House of Silence, which is just a poetic way of saying ancient jail. 7 common terms for different shades, behaviors, or even intentions of light. Each major deity had their own light. Shamash, the sun god, had a righteous, punishing glow. He saw all and missed nothing. It's not from a flame, not from the sky, but the light that's made sacred by its purpose. It could be the same candle, but it becomes LU when it touches the right thing. The ziggurat looms above, massive, stair-stepped, painted in faded blues and yellows. Its upper chambers catch the last threads of daylight, and even those have a name. Karu, the high light. Not just in altitude, but in prestige. It's the kind of glow reserved for godly appearances or extremely smug astrologers. Now imagine being the poor guy who had to make sure the light was behaving before a ceremony. And as the stars begin to prick through the night, you wonder how many kinds of light you've already seen, and how many you've misnamed. Nope, sorry, this is just Zemu, not holy enough yet. In Babylon, even the gods sometimes got it wrong. Ishtar had a flirtier shimmer, like candlelight caught in gold jewelry. If someone was called dim like pre-dawn light, it wasn't a compliment. If a lover's eyes shone like Ishtar's veil, things were probably going well for you that evening. The kind of light they called cuck-smoky, shifting, full of memory. Not bright enough to guide you, but enough to make the alley feel haunted. Historians still argue whether the light terms were linguistic leftovers from earlier Sumerian cultures, or developed later as Babylon's religious hierarchy grew more complex and obsessive. And if a priest said your soul reflected no divine light, well, maybe sit down for that conversation. Picture a scribe hunched on a reed mat, stylus in hand, the red glow of the setting sun catching the corner of his oil lamp. But no, legal documents, astronomical charts, personal letters of a grocery list use different light words depending on the time, context, and attitude of the illumination. He squints. Was that Nuru or Namaru? Light on the page. He pauses, chews his lip. Like how Arctic cultures have many words for snow, just for fun, but because survival depends on it. Maybe Babylonian priests had to detect whether the sunlight at dawn was warm or cold, golden or brittle, hopeful or sarcastic. If he picks the wrong one, someone could misread an omen, a bad harvest, a war, a death. And that's on him. No pressure. Even the storm god Adad had a kind of flash to him, blinding, aggressive, showing up when you least wanted to see anything at all. Because for them, light wasn't just visual, it was moral, emotional, divine. After all, if the gods could appear in the light, misidentifying the glow might be seen as a form of heresy. Or worse, disrespect. A priest pauses at the temple steps, eyes narrowed at the fading blue above him. 2 children squabble over a cracked mirror shard reflecting the pink edge of the horizon. A woman pours water slowly over clay, watching the golden ripples that follow. This is the ancient Near East. Logic packed its bags a while ago. Soft glow before dawn. That's not the same as the gleam on a polished spearhead. The flicker inside a shrine. It's a totally different word than the golden shimmer on a river at noon. And yes, you will be quizzed later. You're about to wander through a world where every beam of light meant something. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, tell me where you're rewatching from and what time it is right now. Let's say who else can tease sleep tonight. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're trudging through the edge of the old city just as twilight begins to settle. The Babylonians didn't just notice light, they categorized it, mythologized it, obsessed over it. And this wasn't just some artsy affectation. It affected everything from their farming rituals to their courtroom decisions. What's more, the Babylonians tied light directly to the gods. Historians still argue whether the Babylonians invented this system out of linguistic precision or pure spiritual paranoia. The first recorded uses of these words show up in Akkadian cuneiform sharp, little wedge-shaped pokes carved into clay tablets. You'd think these were just poetic distinctions. Want a fun one? One of the lesser-used terms, Lu, refers specifically to the purified or sanctified light that falls on an object during ritual. Quirkier still, Babylonian light words also crept into expressions of personality. You step deeper into the city now. As night settles, the words shift too. Lamps come alive, shadows stretch like cats waking from a nap, and the streets glow with a low amber haze. And here's a fringe theory. Some scholars suggest that these many words for light helped train Babylonian eyes to see nuance in ways we can see anymore. Still, the biggest question remains, were these words purely observational or theological instruments? For now, you're left walking the dim streets, lulled by the rhythmic flicker of oil lamps behind lattice windows. No worries. You keep walking, but now the air has shifted. The sun is gone, fully tucked behind the western plains, and the stars are starting to pour in from the east. The sky doesn't darken like a curtain falling. It layers, deepens, swells. And suddenly that whole 7 words for light thing is starting to make a little more sense. Shamash was the god of justice, and his light didn't just illuminate or revealed. Nothing escapes Shamash's rays. If you stole a goat and thought you got away with it, think again. Is that unblinking afternoon beam on your doorstep? Yeah, that's a divine subpoena. Good luck hiding your lies in that glow. This wasn't a stable glow. This was a dynamic, flickering brilliance that signaled power in motion. You didn't just see this light, you felt it. Their associated lights were stranger, more ambiguous. Nurgle's glow was often linked with Cuscu, a reddish, trembling light, bad news, usually. The color of war, disease, and that feeling when you accidentally say something awful at a family dinner. Naboo's shimmer was sharp, pointed like a glint off a blade or a glimmer in someone SIU Dante trust. And Inertus was heavy, thick, almost smoky cuck again. Used here not for coziness, but for divine gravity. There were protocols. If a certain light appeared before dawn, the city might need a ritual bath. 7 divine lights, 7 sacred words, 7 levels of heaven. One unlucky priest, mistaking Zemu for Iru, might recommend a wedding on a day meant for funerals. Oops. We have records of royal astrologers being fired, literally tossed out. When their celestial reading didn't match reality, the torches are lit, casting overlapping shadows on mosaic walls. Every flicker means something. Every glow has a name. And the stars above are not far-off gas balls. They're gods, whispering across centuries, shining through light that once had a name your tongue no longer remembers. Oh, you said this light meant prosperity? Yeah, about that. Turns out the king's wheat rotted, and someone released a swarm of frogs. Pack your things. Even 7 gates into the underworld just to keep things spicy. It gave you a vocabulary for things you could barely understand. You weren't just standing under a strange sky. You were participating in it, reading it like a scroll. Babylon loved 7 the way we love 3 easy steps. In blog articles, it made the universe feel digestible, like you could maybe get through life without being zapped by cosmic bureaucracy. If the wrong glow hit a statue at the wrong hour, the king might need to make an emergency sacrifice. You don't have to know the old words to feel their weight. You didn't get to say, oh, that's just a pretty sunset. A pretty sunset might mean a famine next spring, or your neighbor's accidental beheading. Hard to say. A light that pressed down on you instead of lifting. It tugged at your shirt. It smelled like ozone. It made your bones whisper, hey, maybe don't mess with this guy. Or did these words float, fluid, bending to context and cult preferences? Some tablets suggest overlap, others don't. And let's not forget, this was a civilization that also assigned colors, numbers, and animals to gods. It was a cosmic spreadsheet, and some cells were merged when no one was looking. Because right now, the light in the sky doesn't feel anything like what it did 10 minutes ago. It feels different. The word Zemu often described the silver, almost hesitant shimmer of moonlight. The priests climb to the roof to observe the sky. They're not just stargazing, they're deciphering mood swings. If Venus twinkles a bit too brightly, maybe a war is brewing. Mars shows up brighter than usual, get your funerary incense ready. The gods are talking, through light, through its color, movement, angle, and timing. It's the kind of glow that doesn't fill a space it brushes it. It wasn't just something that happened. It was something that acted, and those actions were tied to divine will. Sin's light was considered wise, mysterious, but a bit moody. Depending on the lunar phase, the same moon could signal divine favor or incoming doom. Just your average light-based mood swing from a deity. Like it's been handed off. Think of it as the ancient version of a ring light. Ishtar's shimmer meant charm, seduction, chaos, and possibly stabbing someone if they didn't text back. The Babylonians didn't just observe that difference. They structured their entire world around it. See, those 7 light words? They weren't chosen at random. Each one corresponded at least in part to a divine entity. 7 words. 7 major gods. 7 heavenly bodies visible to the naked eye. The sun, the moon, and 5 wandering stars, what we call planets now. They believed each of these lights was a divine being, watching, whispering, occasionally slapping mortals around just for fun. Let's start with Shamash, the sun god. His light was Nuru, the bright, blazing clarity of noon. Then there's Sin, the moon god. His light had a quieter vocabulary. Ishtar, goddess of love and war, had a light that was often described as Namrua, brilliant. Attractive glow, more radiant than the average torchlight, but softer than the sun. Marduk, Babylon's chief god, had his own brand of light often described as Iru, which could mean a burning or rising flame. Then there were the planetary gods, Nergal, Nabu, and Ninurta. Historians still argue whether these terms were ever strictly codified. Was Namru always Ishtar's glow? Did Iru belong to Marduk alone? But the key idea here is this. For the Babylonians, light wasn't passive. Picture yourself standing in the temple courtyard as the stars blink awake. And here's the kicker. You couldn't respond to that light any way you wanted. This is also where the number 7 becomes more than coincidence. Of course, this didn't stop the occasional misinterpretation. And yet, despite the stakes, people found comfort in the system. It turned chaos into pattern, so now you're in the city's heart. But that's okay. Because even in forgetting, the language of light still lingers in your screens, your stories, the way your mind registers the soft gold of morning, or the eerie blue of pre-storm skies. You're living under the same heavens, after all. You move along a quieter street now, the kind where even the stones underfoot seem to be listening. Around you, the city exhales. Cooking fires dwindle, distant chanting fades. And up ahead, you spot a low clay building with an open doorway flickering with amber light. You duck your head in, and there they are. 2 scribes hunched over wooden boards, their knees tucked beneath them, read styluses in hand, scratching actual words into wet clay tablets. The light that spills onto their work, not sunlight, not moonlight. There's a dampness in the corners from water jars. And the only sound aside from the occasional muttered curses, the faint scratching of stylus against tablet. You watch one scribe pause, squint at his work, then lean sideways to let the lamplight catch the clay from a different angle. They knew that different light changed how your mind worked. Was it about the scribe's mental state, or the god's approval? There's a tablet still cracked and barely legible that says, roughly, if the light from the lamp falls first upon the left side of the table, misfortune will befall the younger brother. If a flame went out during a legal text that was considered a sign, either the gods didn't like what was being written, or someone forgot to refill the oil, not an actual dance. A tablet copied by the light of Marduk would be stronger against time, error, and accidental curses. So yeah, they had holy quality assurance based on lighting conditions. But the ritual of adjusting the lamp's height, position, and fuel level multiple times during a shift. The air inside the room is thick, the clay tablets stacked carefully in woven baskets, some marked with little tags for translation later. One leans in, carefully extinguishes the flame with a twist of cloth knot by blowing it out. Why? Because breath might carry impurity? The room darkens, and just before the last glow fades, you catch a glimpse of something etched on the wall, a circle with 7 spokes. They'd raise it to cast longer shadows, lower it to sharpen lines, rotate it to reduce glare. It was part craftsmanship, part superstition, part trying not to go blind. Honestly, if you've ever messed with your phone brightness for 10 minutes before bed, you'd fit right in. Either way, protocol demanded a pause, a prayer, maybe a fresh wick. You didn't just keep going. Light was in charge of the writing schedule, which feels weirdly specific and vaguely threatening, like the light itself was playing favorites. Did they know how light changed brain chemistry? Or were they just afraid of writing under the wrong sky? But your mind is still inside that quiet room where words and light dance together across clay? It's strange, isn't it? How something so flickering could shape a civilization S records, and how a single misread glow could change someone's fate forever? Can't say for sure. But let's be honest, don't you type better emails at golden hour? Legal contracts, for example, were often copied in early evening light. Never too early, never too late. Why? Because that time of day was associated with clarity, fairness, and less mental fatigue. And also, according to one text, the sun god has finished judgment, but the moon god has not yet begun dreaming. The Babylonians used different terms for the way light fell across the page based on angle and intensity. There was Keto, a soft light good for revising, gentle enough not to blind you to your own mistakes. And Namru, the clearer, crisper kind, best used for copying things word for. Picture trying to rewrite a tax code in candlelight. You'd want the brightest glow possible, not a dim flicker that makes the word ox look like son-in-law. So you're in a divine gray zone, the ideal bureaucratic window. He needs to see the shadow of each wedge to know if it's right. The light isn't just revealing his work, it's shaping it. It's the warm, buttery flicker of a fat-bellied oil lamp balanced on a low stool between them. You peek inside. It's not a temple, not a home, something older, simpler, and somehow more serious. This is a scribe's room, or what passes for an office in ancient Babylon. And here's where the obsession with light becomes maddeningly practical. The Babylonian scribe wasn't just a writer. They distinguished between the flat, pale light of early dawn, which was no good for anything requiring fine detail, and the stronger flame-lit glow of Eru, which had just enough bite to sharpen shadow. Some scribes preferred the white-orange light of fish oil lamps. Others liked darker, fuels thicker, smokier, harder to breathe, but better for dramatic shadows. Also, sometimes the oil was just what was available, because fish guts were weirdly abundant in Mesopotamia. He was a bureaucrat, a prophet, a weather forecaster, and a part-time poet. He needed to see every symbol clearly, and each wedge-shaped mark had to be just right. So if you recorded the word for harvest with the wrong kind of light term, the king might accidentally mobilize an army, and that's not even the worst-case scenario. The room itself smells like burnt flax and chalky clay. And yes, the Babylonians had specific words for the kind of light that made writing possible. What's surprising here isn't just the precision, it's the mindfulness. Historians still argue whether this awareness of light-s mood was a kind of primitive psychology or simply ritual superstition. Here's where it gets really fun. Babylonian omens were in tea just based on skylight or flame light. They sometimes mentioned the light in the room. And of course, there were always backup lamps. These scribes didn't mess around. Let's also talk about how language shaped memory. And then there's the scribe's lamp dance. One curious fringe tidbit. Some temples believe that certain kinds of light made the written word more durable, not physically, but spiritually. By now, the scribes are packing up, a symbol of light, of language, of control. Outside, the stars are sharper now, stabbing through the dark like pins through silk. You step back onto the path, surrounded by shadows that feel a little less empty now. Even the darkness here, as history. The path tilts downhill now, and the air feels cooler, heavier. You pass under a mud brick arch, where moss clings to the damp stone like sleep clings to your eyelids. Inscribed light. The Babylonians were also watching something slipperier. Reflected light. Babylon's whole layout depended on water, irrigation, sewage, transportation, even defense. You can't overstate how important those canals were. Without them, this place would have gone full Mad Max Desert Edition. And where there's water, there's reflections, sometimes helpful, sometimes ominous. This wasn't full-on crystal ball territory, but it was close. Why? Because reflected light could confuse the gods. One surviving fragment warns, "Let no polished bronze be in the room of dreams, lest the light forget its origin." Which, frankly, sounds like the tagline for a very artsy horror movie, because moonlight was believed to be pure, connected directly to Sin, the moon god. Firelight? That was earthly, unpredictable. Sometimes holy, sometimes profane. Think of it as the difference between a cathedral S stained glass glow and a gas station S flickering fluorescent tube. There's a dock, your simple wooden posts, slick with water moss. A small boat creaks softly, nudging the shore, and from the boat you see another lantern. It made them feel closer to the edge of things. To the gods who didn't live in the sky, but beneath your feet, these sects would even place polished stones in their fire pits, not for warmth, but to warp the light into strange patterns. Some said it helped them see visions. Others probably just liked being spooky. But this one's light is strange, reddish, thick, barely reaching the edges of its own halo. Same principle, just fewer vending machines. They believe that this kind of light didn't just signal something wrong, it invited it. That's why some people avoided using certain oils or wicks. Even the ingredients mattered. It's too much soot in the flame, and suddenly your dinner is haunted. A polished silver bowl filled with water could become a divine interface. If the light danced smoothly, that was good. If it wobbled or changed color, there it is again, the double glow. The moon above and its trembling twin below. You stand there now, the water lapping gently, and wonder what kind of light touches your life the most. The clean, sharp light of noon. The dreamy shimmer of reflected stars. Or the crooked, dusky haze that can't decide if it's dying or just beginning. But you're starting to realize how little of the world's light we actually understand and how much of it might be looking back. You can see why this might freak someone out. Is the light really coming from above? That wavering shimmer on the canal wasn't just pretty, it was a whisper from the gods. Maybe if you stared into it long enough, you'd see something you weren't supposed to. Or is the canal pretending? Is the reflection just a trick? Or is it something else? Entirely another realm, another message, another you looking back from beneath the surface. You might be looking at plague season, that's right. They noticed how water changed, light bent it, broke it, blurred it. They even had a word for the odd, shivery gleam that danced on moving canals, MLU. The exact meaning is lost to time, but the message is clear reflected light could split destiny. It was unstable, magical, dangerous. It was not to be taken lightly. A light that didn't stay still, didn't behave, didn't belong entirely to the gods or the humans. What they had were polished obsidian or bronze, discostly, temperamental, and a little terrifying. Reflections were unstable, distorted, temporary. You couldn't trust them the way we trust our bathroom selfies. And when they mixed with firelight or torchlight, forget it. Faces bent, shadows multiplied. Light wasn't your friend, became something else. Something unclean. Ahead you can hear water, not the wild rush of a river, but the soft trickle of channels and canals Babylon's veins. Light shimmers here too, but it's not from the sky. It bounces off the surface of water, flickering like something alive. And here's where things take a twist. Because while we've been talking about divine light, was MLU just poetic language for moonshine on water? Or did they believe that light, once reflected, became a new entity? Some fringe scholars think they saw reflection itself as a kind of spirited ghost version of real light. Kind of like your bathroom mirror version at 2 a.m. when you're trying to avoid eye contact with your own regrets. This reflection obsession wasn't just poetic, it was practical. Imagine being a farmer, trudging along a canal at dawn. You glance into the water and see the sky only backward, rippling, strange, that pale light flickering on the surface. It might be CMP, dawn's first hint, or it might be a sign, one old text warns. If the light of the moon is seen twice upon the water, and the second is brighter, the gods may be confused, which is the ancient version of don't mess with reflections during retrograde. Historians still argue whether these descriptions were metaphorical or literal. We even have records of priests consulting water basins for omens. Even more curious, Some temples banned mirror-like surfaces entirely in certain ritual rooms. You pause near a narrow bridge and look down into the water. The Babylonians didn't have mirrors like ours. That's why most reflective rituals happened outdoors, with moonlight or starlight, not firelight. And then there is the odd little detail from a text found near Ure. Woman who gives birth while the water reflects both torch and moon shall have a child with two fates. You keep walking, and the canal widens. This might be what the Babylonians called Kuskadat trembling. Ominous glow often linked to bad omens, sickness, and Nergal, the god of war and pestilence. And yet others sought it out. Fringe cults, especially those who worshipped underworld deities, wanted that weird light. It's strange, isn't it? How something as ordinary as a flicker can carry so much meaning. The Babylonians didn't separate science and spirit. Light was physics and feeling. It was math and myth. But luckily, you're not staying long enough for that. You turn from the water, letting the moon's cool touch follow you like a silent hand on your shoulder. You're not afraid, exactly. You leave the canal behind, your sandals brushing against the cracked soil of a dry path now speckled with tiny flecks of mica. The stars above seem to breathe, pulsing ever so faintly. And their light feels older, here less decorative, more deliberate. No, the Babylonians took stargazing very seriously. You step closer, and your foot sinks just a bit into the packed dirt, still warm from the day's sun. Noting the exact moment the moon crosses a particular star, watching how the starlight moves, you might think it's relaxing watching stars, but for them, it's administrative, legal, dangerous. The air smells of tamarisk and something sharp, maybe cumin. Did starlight carry divine intention? Or was it just a cosmic billboard, politely blinking plague incoming like a celestial weather app? That's right. The absence of expected light was treated as its own phenomenon. He's too busy squinting at a faint cluster of stars near the shoulder of Taurus. The priests had rules. If a star appears as mist, beware the whispering thief. Or if the hunter's star gives pale light, the east shall suffer. Light levels were divination tools like reading tea leaves or doom-scrolling a horoscope at midnight. Only instead of Gemini, don't text your ex. It was more like, if Mercury burns blue, delay the king's coronation. A priest marks something on a wax board. You're going to etch it into clay later, permanently. One priest might start his shift when Nisuda, the singing light, appeared near the zenith. Another ended his watch when Taramu, the wandering light, dipped below the west. They didn't wear watches. They watched light. That's the thing about light, here it gets recorded. Some priestly records mention a light ladder made of 7 different lights, some from stars, some from flames, some from dreams. Yes, dreams. Apparently, the light seen within dreams was its own category. The top of the ladder, Enchar Ilne, divine light, to purest starlight. Rare, dangerous, almost always associated with prophecy or total madness. Sometimes both, named, archived. These people watched the heavens like accountants watch tax codes. And just like taxes, the stars could make or break you. A list of dangerous bedtime snacks. Hard to say. But the fact that they ranked light like that graded it says a lot. To them, not all light was equal. Some could feed the soul. Others could ruin a year. You follow his gaze, and sure enough, there's that flickering Killam light again. Weak, but still holding on. Sounds both poetic and deeply unsettling. Was that twilight red? A pollution effect? Or just a bad night for metaphors? It looks like a smudge more than a point.
Think about that starlight shimmering through layers of heat, humidity, and dust. And someone 2,000 years ago saying, yes.
They're calibrating now, trying to isolate a single star's glow. It's as close as you'll get here to a laboratory. The god is weeping. Honestly, fair. And as you ease back onto the ground, one thought follows you into the dark. You're lying beneath a sky that someone mapped 4,000 years ago, with words for lights you'll never see again. You might not know which glow is Killam, which flicker is Taramu, but you can feel their names humming just behind the silence. They even had a termnar, Zappler meaning the fallen flame. If a star usually seen by mid-month suddenly didn't appear, omen, trouble, maybe famine, maybe betrayal, maybe your neighbor just stole your goat. Either way, someone had to atone. Up on the platform, a small group of astronomer priests adjusts their robes and lifts their gazes skyward. You rub your eyes and realize the path ahead slopes toward a garden of sorts. It's not the lush kind. No fountains or bright flowers. It's carefully arranged rows of medicinal herbs, low trees, and in the center, a raised platform. This is where the priests come to measure the stars, and not in a, oh look, Orion's belt kind of way. Clay tablets filled with tables of numbers, lists of observations. The light of Zedetu is clear. Mars approaches the tail of the scorpion, not in a fun listen to the stars sing way. More like whispers that Dan T stop until you eat fig paste and bathe in barley water. Not dangerous, just annoying. Kind of like TikTok's algorithm, but with more celestial consequences. That might sound like horoscope nonsense to you, but this was serious state business. Poorly timed ritual, because someone misread the light, could result in royal embarrassment or worse, a military blunder. Imagine invading the wrong city because Venus showed up early. They aren't waiting for divine inspiration. They're timing things, tracking, and here's the twist. They didn't just have one word for starlight. Of course not. That would have been too easy. They had multiple terms depending on intensity, location, and even mood. Yes, mood. There's a term, killam, which describes faint but persistent starlight that flickers near the horizon, often associated with uneasy nights and messages from the west. Then there's Zedetu, brighter, colder starlight seen at high altitude, often called the mountain light, even though Babylon had no mountains. Symbolic mountains? Maybe? And they used this terminology in their records. Historians still argue whether the Babylonians believed the stars caused events or merely announced them. And speaking of plague, there was one specific kind of star-related light they really didn't like. The invisible one. You settle onto a low bench near the platform. The priest beside you doesn't even glance over. That faintness mattered, and they really got into detail. There's a surviving tablet where a priest describes the color of starlight as wine-thinned blood. Fringe scholars have even suggested that the Babylonians might have noticed phenomena like atmospheric refraction or star twinkling, and given them spiritual meaning. One funny little fringe belief: some texts hint that staring at certain kinds of starlight too long could make you hear things. You look up again, and the stars have shifted slightly. The starlight also told time, not just general time, but temple duty time, prayer time, omen-checking time. And here, see your quirky moment of the evening. Historians debate what this latter really meant. Was it metaphorical? A meditative technique? As the priests finish up their observations, they lower a screen over the raised platform, a cloth stretched on a frame dark enough to cut some of the moonlight. You start to feel drowsy. The stars blur a little. Not from sleep, but from awe. The stars aren't just points of light anymore. They're characters, symbols, warnings, blessings. Light isn't just how they saw the world. It was the world. Your body shifts slightly as the earth cools beneath you. And the sky overhead, stitched with stars, feels more like a velvet canopy than something infinite. The light up there doesn't just shine. It drips, slowly and deliberately, into your eyes. Not divine, not reflected, not celestial, but crafted, man-made, the kind born from effort, controlled, manipulated, and shaped. The Babylonians, for all their divine reverence, had a deeply pragmatic side. Light wasn't just to be honored, it was to be used. You're not watching it anymore, it's watching you. And from here, in the hush between breath and breeze, another kind of light comes into focus. So let's talk about Antris Cipra, literally light of labor. Did they genuinely believe the flame had will? Was it just a poetic way to describe a bad lamp day? Some had spouts shaped to cast light downward, perfect for writing. Others were made with wide lips to scatter the flame's glow broadly, like an early version of ambient lighting. Honestly, given how unreliable ancient wicks were, it's understandable to get emotional when your only light source refuses to cooperate. One tablet recommends mixing crushed fig leaves into the oil to sweeten the burn and settle the lamp's breath. A group of older men are bent over a game board, tiny carved lions lined up in formation. Not like sound, but flame quality. The length of the wick, shape of the bowl, and oil mixture could produce different light personalities. There is a long-winded text from Borsippa that outlines 11 lamp types from laughing flame to weeping wick. But it let people live, work, cook, write, laugh, argue. The soft glow from your phone screen. The light above your stove flickering as you heat up leftovers. It's just like you might say, "Come on, Wi-Fi, don't die on me now." Still live by work light, even when we pretend we've evolved beyond it. The flickering windows fade behind you, replaced by open sky and a horizon so dark it swallows the edges of the world. But that the glow of effort, of routine, of daily survival, it lingers in your memory like a last ember. Without it, Babylon would have gone dark every night. And nobody's finishing a tax tablet in the dark. No one agrees if that's metaphor or technical jargon, but still adorable. Their faces flicker in and out of shadow. One laughs softly, the others grumble. And above them, a single lamp, wide bowled and slow burning. Clearly, a lamp once hung here. Be more than one. You close your eyes for a moment and try to imagine the glow warm, steady, quietly humming with life. It's casting what the Babylonians called in-char zoot, settled light. The kind that didn't jump, didn't flare, didn't startle you, which, wow, is both charming and vaguely threatening. A small window glows with that warm, amber light, the kind that looks like honey and smells faintly of resin and burnt wool. Left too close to a wall, and a clay home might go up like a tinderbox.
Oh.
That's why lamp placement was regulated. In wealthier homes, there were even niches built into the walls to hold flames at eye-coming height, meaning they wouldn't T-blind you if you turned too fast. That's Enchar Cypri, alive and well. It's not like Steve the Sconce or anything, but they treated the flame as a household spirit. A tablet from Sipper even describes a lamp being punished left unlit for 3 nights because its light betrayed its duty. The phrase appears in temple inventories, household manuals, and oddly divorce proceedings. He let the lamp fall into disarray was apparently a valid complaint. Can you imagine that in court today?
Your Honor?
He trimmed the wick sideways and everything smelled like burnt goat. Case closed. The translator of that text apparently paused in the margin to write. This was their term for work light, task light. The glow of oil lamps lit not for ceremony or omen reading. A boy stirs something in a pot thick and gray, probably barley soup. And in the corner, a small oil lamp, dancing lazily atop a triangular stand. It's not fancy, but it's doing its job. But for grinding grain, copying tablets, or stitching clothes after sunset, you picture a scribe hunched over a clay tablet, flame flickering just beyond his line of sight, the wick hissing every now and then as it catches an air current. That light wasn't wholly it, was helpful. But even helpful light had rules. Not just anyone could light a lamp. In most households, the matriarch controlled the hearth and its flame. With it came the responsibility of managing night labor. A poorly trimmed wick, or a bad batch of oil, that could mean soot in the eyes, shadows in the wrong corners, or worse, a smudge on the king's tax tablet. You don't want to be that guy. You step quietly through a smaller street now, where low homes cluster against one another like napping dogs. Inside, a woman sharpens a reed stylus. Her daughter needs dough. And here's the quirky part some families name their lamps. Historians still argue whether this practice was literal or symbolic. Here's something else: they engineered their lamps for specific tasks. Shallow ones for quick jobs. Deep ones for overnight burning. They even used different oils for different jobs. Fish oil was cheap but smoky. Sesame oil burned clean but was expensive. And animal fat, reserved for desperation or sacrifice. You pass by another window. There's a tablet that describes Anjar Zoot as light that minds its manners. But let's not romanticize this too much. These lamps could be dangerous. And here's a fringe theory for your sleepy brain to chew on. Some scholars believe Babylonian lamps were tuned. You stop beneath an awning now, where soot marks trace the ceiling. That's the strange thing about Inchar Cypriot. Was unglamorous, but vital. It didn't guide kings or reveal divine visions. This kind of light feels familiar, doesn't it? It's not so different from your bedside lamp. And it's oddly comforting knowing that 4,000 years ago, someone stared into a tiny flame and whispered, "Keep steady." Just a few more lines. Same vibe, different tools. You keep walking. The houses thin out, and you realize not all light is divine or spooky or dramatic. Some light is just there to help us make it through another night. The work lights fade behind you now, soft glows tucked into quiet homes. Like fireflies that finally stopped arguing about whose turn it is to stay lit. You walk into a space that's broader, quieter, and somehow deeper. The night air has a different texture here, cooler, laced with traces of myrrh and something faintly sour, like old incense and wet limestone. And as you move, another light greets you. Not from stars, from flames, but from water. Yes, light on water, not the wrong shimmer. That wouldn't do. If the light was too sharp, too metallic, as one tablet describes it, the ritual was delayed. Bad light, bad omen. There's a ritual called the reflection test, where someone suspected of deception would be asked to stare at their own reflection at dawn. If the NHRM rippled oddly around them, guess what? It's guilty. Whether that meant actual guilt or just a really bad breeze, no one's sure. Not by stars, not by maps, but by the shimmer itself. They called it Gasol and Cree, the dancing trail. You've probably done something similar, following car headlights through a foggy night, or the bouncing beam of someone else's flashlight when your own phone is at 2%. Supposedly, if the shimmer moved steadily ahead of your boat, it was safe to follow. If it circled or bent inward, turned back, or be swallowed by mud, reeds, or something worse. A classic haunted swamp drama. And it makes sense that this light, this NHRM, shows up again and again in texts as a sign of passage. Some scholars take that literally as in canals for the dead, like Mesopotamian soul fairies. Others think it means spiritual reflection. And one particularly imaginative professor wrote an entire paper, claiming Babylonian canals were early mirrors of moral clarity. Which sounds deep, but also like the title of a TED Talk no one asked for. Not just literal journeys, but inner ones. Try again tomorrow. Some call it symbolic. Others swear it was an early form of interrogation psychology. The shimmer dances in the corner of your eye. For a moment, you're not entirely sure where the sky ends and the water begins, which is exactly the point. This kind of light, the kind that doesn't stay still, doesn't behave, doesn't let you name it with certainty, is what the Babylonians respected most. That phrase shows up again in a lullaby, sung to children in the merchant quarters. When the water glows like the goddess' breath, let your eyes close and dream of figs. You imagine a priest watching that same flicker and thinking, is this the right glow for absolution, or is it the kind that signals a snake in the grain storage? Either way, the idea that water light could judge your soul is a bit intense. Also, terrifying if you've just had too much date wine the night before. That flickering, dancing shimmer you get when even the faintest source moon, torch morning haze glances off a surface and breaks apart into dozens of pieces. But enough to whisper to your eyes, look closer. The surface wobbles slightly, distorting the stars above into soft zigzags like someone melted the sky and stirred it with a reed. The Babylonians noticed it too. In fact, they had a term, Ensharem, the light of waters. According to temple records, Ensharem was considered a transitional light, neither holy nor mundane, neither trustworthy nor dangerous. It existed in between, like a teenager, or that weird stretch of time between 3 and 4 a.m. when the world feels like it's waiting for something terrible or beautiful to happen. A subtle, shifting glow that often appeared at dusk and dawn when the canals still held enough calm to become mirrors. You step near one now, the water low and slow moving, doesn't gurgle or splash, it just glows. Not brightly, not enough to read by. The Babylonians were fascinated with this kind of light. It wasn't just pretty, it was meaningful. This watery light often featured in cleansing rituals. Priests would stand beside a canal or basin, waiting for just the right shimmer to appear. One mainstream historical fact? In the Aku festival, the Babylonian New Year's celebration, a key moment involved the king bathing in sacred water at dawn. Not at any random dawn. At the one where the Ensharem glowed like pearl and amber. It had to be soft, diffused, layered with hues the priests knew by name. If the water sparkled too much, the ceremony postponed. And yes, imagine rescheduling your entire new year because the canal was having an off day. Fringe belief time. Some texts implied that light on water could reveal lies, not metaphorically, literally. Historians still argue whether this was a widespread practice or just a temple-specific oddity. You crouch near the canal now, fingers grazing the surface. It's cooler than expected, with little flashes of starlight bouncing off your skin. Here is a tiny detail you might enjoy. Some Babylonian boatmen believed that light on water at night could lead you. It might sound ridiculous, till you remember that pre-modern navigation had to rely on anything visible. And sometimes that meant trusting a gleam that seemed to move with purpose. One surviving poem written in a rare blend of formal Sumerian and Old Akkadian describes the light of water as the god's last breath before sleep. That's right, shouldn't ASMR. You stay near the canal longer than expected. The gentle hush of water on stone, the swirl of moonlight in liquid eddies, it's hypnotic. There's even a phrase carved into a temple lintel. Light on water leads the soul. You lean back, feeling the cool earth beneath you. Not because it helped them see clearly, but because it reminded them that clarity is always temporary. And light trail. Light trail's never just about vision. Sometimes it's about knowing when not to trust what you see. The canal's shimmer still lingers behind your eyelids as you rise and drift onward, down a narrow slope where wild mint and crushed reeds scent the air like a broken garden. A dullness, as if something's filtering the glow of the moon through a soft veil. If you've seen those massive stone guardians with the 5 legs and blank stares, subtle, steady. A glow that didn't come from flame or sun, but from being watched by something divine. You picture the Lamassu here, carved into walls, eyes that didn't blink, wings that never moved but somehow always hovered, and under them, it's that soft, eerie luminance. It's not enough to guide your step, but just enough to make you second-guess your intentions. The idea was simple. You walk under those carved beings, you feel watched, you behave, you remember your place. And they believed that if you put them in corners, especially dim ones, they could maintain this presence light. There is even a tablet from a merchant who complains that his wife rearranged their Lamassu, and the shadows now feel unruly. Which, honestly, could be a valid horror movie tagline. It's like the world's earliest version of a "You Are Being Recorded" sticker, but made from limestone and nightmares. Or did priests use angled sconces and polished bronze to fake the divine shimmer? There, as an old warning carved into a servant's manual, he who stares into the presence light courts madness, for his soul is not armored in silence. Whether that as a metaphor for overthinking, or just another way to tell kids not to touch the fancy statue, who knows? It doesn't ask you to, but somehow, it demands it. Up top, the wind picks up, catching your clothes and pushing that subtle sense of presence away. The light shifts again, less watcher, more wanderer. But for a few moments, back there in the gateway, you weren't just walking, you were performing, just in case. Some suggest that high temples were designed to catch moonlight in just such a way that it would graze the Lamassu's face at night, casting a shadow shaped like its wings. An Anchar Lamasi. It left no shadow, which is why it was so unnerving. You could never tell if it was gone. It wasn't meant to illuminate or warm. It was meant to haunt. To hold you gently by the shoulder and remind you that even when nothing seems to glow, someone might still be watching. It's not in fear. More like scrutiny, like someone is reading you. It's not loudly, just carefully. Others believe the Babylonians simply felt the light, emotional, psychological, no photons needed. Not warm, not cold, just aware. You might not even notice it until your spine straightened, your breath slowed, and you realized you're not alone. Yeah, those guys. They weren't just decorations. They were protectors, watchers, and some whispered light bearers. You feel it, even if you can't explain it. Your pace slows. You become more cautious, less likely to cause trouble. And in a city of mud brick walls and fragile peace, that pause, valuable. And this is where the Babylonians would have recognized Inchar Lamas, the light of presence. But not your presence. There's one late Babylonian manuscript describes a ceremony in which the Lamassu's presence light is drawn down into a bowl of water, and then used to weigh truth. They placed the bowl between two disputing parties, and whichever reflection shimmered more faintly. Guilty. Again, not great if you're naturally sweaty. The land flattens here, opening into a long stretch of dry stone, and overhead the sky feels lower, as if the stars are leaning in to eavesdrop. That's when you notice it is a strange sort of dimness. Not darkness, just a hush in the light. The Lamassu were divine beings, part lion, part eagle. part human with wings outstretched and faces locked in permanent, unnerving calm. The Babylonians believed that where a Lamassu stood, there would be a particular kind of light, for reminding people that someone or something was keeping tabs. Babylonian scribes called this the eyelid light, the glow that falls between being noticed and being judged. You pause now, standing in what might have once been a gate stone, outlines half swallowed by dust. This kind of light wasn't for seeing, it was for sensing. One mainstream fact: Lamassu statues were placed at city gates, temple entrances, and palace doorways, not just as spiritual guardians, but as psychological deterrents. Quirky side note: some households had miniature Lamassu figurines, like divine action figures. Historians still argue whether this light was meant to be literal, symbolic, or a trick of architecture. Did the stone really glow? And here's the kicker: people weren't supposed to look directly at Enchar Lamassi. That was considered disrespectful, even dangerous. You step through the ruins, and sure enough, your skin starts to crawl. And that's exactly what this light was supposed to do. Some fringe theories go further. Others think that Enchar Lamassi served a practical purpose, too literally slowing people down. Think about it. You walk through a gate. You see that strange half-glow. It's the same way a flickering fluorescent bulb in a school hallway makes you instinctively whisper. You reach a broken stairway now, the stones rounded and worn like old teeth. The Babylonians had a saying, "All light is judged by the shadow it leaves." And maybe that's what makes this kind of light special. You walk on and the presence fades. The presence slips away behind you like breath, fogging up a cold window, and now you're stepping into a different kind of silence, the kind that soaks into your sandals. The stones beneath your feet are darker here, not just in shade but in temperature, somehow heavier, as if the ground is remembering something it doesn't want to tell you. It's not about flames leaping like stunt actors or sudden bursts of orange. No, Inchar Ebu referred to that specific unstable glow that comes from rage. From tension, it's from the kind of heat that sits under the skin before it explodes. Up ahead, a torch flickers behind a wall slit, the light spilling out in jagged intervals, like someone trying and failing to whisper a secret. Maybe in a kitchen when someone slams a pot down with too much emphasis. If it still glowed red after 3 breaths, it was destined for vengeance. If it didn't glow at all, it was a cold blade, untrustworthy in combat. Not for lack of sharpness, but lack of spirit, apparently. Kind of like that one guy in your group project who technically does the work, but leaves you emotionally exhausted anyway. Or on the edge of a thunderstorm when the clouds swirl in ugly ways and the air itself starts to glow slightly wrong. Tell me that's not just a poetic way of saying, don't touch that. It showed up when things were about to happen. Fights, betrayals, sudden storms, bad omens. If you saw this light and ignored it, you were basically daring the world to wreck your day. Whatever lived in that forge, whatever glowed in those molten moments is fading. But part of you still watches the shadows, just in case they shift a little too quickly. More than that, don't turn your back on it. Apparently they believed that if a baby found the boiling light funny, they might grow up unpredictable, to bold, to quick to anger. Which sounds a lot like parenting via weird nightlight warnings. A traveler's account scratched into the side of a clay jug describes passing a remote shrine at dusk. The god statue shimmered with heat, but the wind was cool. We did not sleep that night, which, to be honest, sounds like the tagline for a pretty decent indie horror game. Was it a trick of red embers and low light, or did certain forges create gases and hues we just don't see anymore in today's cleaner conditions? One theory posits that the shimmering may have been metallic particles reflecting torchlight, making weapons seem alive, especially when fresh from quenching. It's not the lightning that's scary, it's the color before the lightning. Like it's shifting between flicker and flash without choosing either. And you get it. Suddenly, you feel why they'd call it boiling. Because this glow doesn't rest. It pulses. It wants to move. It wants to burst. Not metaphorically. Literally. They thought certain kinds of divine anger could sink into your blood and boil you from within. So treatments involved more than herbs. Involved smoke, chants, and, get this, surrounding the patient with black stones to soak the heat. If that failed, just bury the bed and start over. And this is where the Babylonians would have used another word, Inchar Ebutha, boiling light. Now, don't get too excited. This isn't fire exactly. You've seen this light before. Maybe not in a temple. That's what the Babylonians meant. A light that warned. Broken walls, sunken alcoves, a deep pit where someone once smelted metal and whispered to gods with names lost to time. The smell here is still a little sharp, like charcoal mixed with iron filings and sweat that never quite cooled. A light that boiled, even if no heat touched your skin. You round a corner now and step into the remains of what was once an armory at least. That's what the layout suggests. Swords weren't just blades. They held energy. And when a batch came out of the forge with a flickering, pulsing light still dancing on the steel, that was Enchar-Ebu, the boiling light, the rage sheen. One mainstream historical fact: Babylonian weapon forges were considered semi-sacred spaces, and the workers mostly male.
Oh.
Occasionally female were believed to absorb emotional charge from their tools. There is a half-burned tablet that records a ritual where a newly forged dagger is placed in a priestess' hands. The boiling light wasn't just for weapons. It was said to gather around angry gods, especially when their temples were ignored or misused. Fringe belief incoming. Some Babylonian healers believed that intense fevers especially, those accompanied by delirium, were signs that Enchar-Ebu had leaked into the body. Historians still argue whether the boiling light was ever visually real. Whatever the case, you stand now in one of these ruined forge pits, and the light here really does feel unstable. One tablet even refers to this light as the eye of the coal that watches without blinking. The Babylonians didn't fear Enchar-Ebu because it could burn. They feared it because it never asked permission. And here's something strange. In some rare lullabies, there are warnings to babies not to laugh at red flickers. You walk away from the pit slowly now, and the temperature cools. The air smooths out. Because Enchar-Ebu doesn't always announce itself with fire. Sometimes it's just the sense that someone's about to lose their temper. And that light? That's the one you don't want to look at too long. The air settles behind you like a sigh, the tension from the forge melting off your shoulders as the stones beneath your feet cool and darken. Walk slower now, letting each step take its time. Your thoughts quieter. Your senses a little dulled as. If the land knows it's time to hush things down, just a soft push against the edge of your awareness. Like a distant hum, you glance upward, and there it is. The sky's glow has changed again. Light that wasn't of the world, but brushed across it. Rare, untamed, not wholly so much as unburdened. It didn't belong to humans. It didn't answer prayers. God. It just existed. And on specific festival nights, usually during equinoxes or solstice transitions, these walkways would become pale ribbons under the sky. Not as punishment, just as a side effect. Because this light, they claimed, wasn't for humans. It wasn't meant to be noticed. Or just the result of perfectly polished courtyards under an unusually large Mesopotamian moon. Some claimed the light came from a blend of white stone and mica flex mineral inclusions that reflected even minimal starlight, creating the illusion of an otherworldly glow. Not sleep dreams. That foggy headspace where time folds over on itself, where your past and future shake hands behind your back. Some scribes claimed that Enchar-Ebu was where the gods kept their secrets, not written, not spoken, just hovering, waiting for someone calm enough to sense them. It was like catching a dream mid-sentence and realizing it's not yours. There's a warning inscribed on a temple wall fragment. Do not chase the silver path after midnight. It leads to forgetting. That's all it says. No context. Just don't follow the light. And of course, that makes you want to follow it even more. For a few minutes, you're not a traveler. You're not a listener. You're not even curious. You're just suspended. You waited for it to find you, and if it did, you were expected to stop. Breathe. Listen. Not gone. Just out of reach. Like it's folded inside the quiet. And this is what Enchar-Ebu does. It doesn't dazzle. It dissolves. Which for a civilization that lived in heat, dust, and war is a surprisingly poetic way of saying, breathe here a while. It turns sharp things soft, turns edges into curves. It doesn't demand your attention. It waits until you forget where you were going, and then gently suggests you stay. Because this wasn't a light that helped you see things. There are carvings on the walls, shallow, faint, not meant to be read but noticed. Swirls, lines, hints of wings, maybe symbols for wind or silence, or things we're not supposed to understand. This was a light that asked you to forget them. It'd leave polished silver dishes out during full moons, especially during childbirth, believing the light could bless a newborn's first moments. But the bowls had to be stored upside down, or the light would leak out. Which sounds exactly like something a sleep-deprived dad would come up with at 3 a.m. No torches, no fires, just ambient glow. And yes, people believed this was the gods breathing, claimed it made people more honest. Apparently the caravan got robbed the next night, and the buyers blamed the light for making them too trusting.
Which honestly might just be ancient marketing karma.
But then there's a ripple, not of sound, not even of movement. It's not flickering like flame, not pressing like judgment. It's spread, thin and high and almost metallic in color. A pearly wash like moonlight passed through silver gauze. The Babylonians had a name for this 2-inchar, Eleutha, pure light. Now, pure didn't mean what you think it means. This wasn't about morality or goodness. This was about untouchable light. You step into a long causeway now, broken walls leaning in like old friends who VA forgotten your name. This used to be part of a temple complex, or maybe a ceremonial walkway. It's a kind that only lit up for a few moments every month when the moon hit just the right angle. That's when NCHRLU would stretch across the surface like liquid frost. Mainstream historical fact: the Babylonians constructed some sacred walkways and terraces with white limestone and polished gypsum, materials that reflected moonlight with uncanny smoothness. A fringe belief buried in a minor hymn suggests that if a person stood too long in NCHRLU, they might forget their own name. Historians still argue whether NCHRLU was a real observable phenomenon or poetic license. Was it actual light? A high-altitude sheen caused by dust and desert air? Whatever the case, the Babylonians treated this light with serious caution. You didn't step into it without a reason. You didn't chase it. You believed this light came closest to the realm of dreams. You cross the walkway slowly now, the stones underfoot, worn smooth like soap. And here, the quirky bit. Some Babylonian nobles paid priests to trap this pure light in reflective bowls. There's even a legend of a priest who tried to sell bottled NCHRLU to a merchant caravan. They called it Dreamshine. But for all its softness, NCHRLU wasn't harmless. You reach the end of the causeway now, and for a moment you swear your name feels far away. One Babylonian tablet says this light unbuttons the world. So you do. You stand still. Let the air pass through you. Let the glow loosen your thoughts until they float like dandelion fluff. And then the wind picks up again. The light fades, and your name drifts back to you. It's time to keep walking. You walk now through what might have once been a market district, hard to say, with only low walls and stone outlines left behind. The breeze carries a faint trace of cumin and ash, though that might just be your imagination, stubbornly conjuring smells from ruins. The moon's a bit higher, shadows longer. The pure light tenchar, Elu, has faded, replaced by a light that's somehow less precise, more curious. It doesn't illuminate the world so much as tease it, as the Babylonians would have said. Is Ansha Sarutha, wandering light. And oh, does this one have a personality? It's the kind of light that shows up where it shouldn't be, like your neighbor's porch lamp flickering at 3 a.m. A ghostly shimmer, not quite glow, not quite shadow. One theory suggests it came from decomposing materials in marshy areas near Babylon, giving off faint bioluminescence under the right conditions. Basically, swamp ghost energy. And yet they respected it. For them, this was the light that forgot its place, the misfit radiance, the wayward cousin of more dignified illumination. Because even a wandering light can reveal the truth if it happens to brush against the right wall, or catch a lie in someone's face. The stones around it are smooth, almost glassy. Not from weather, something else. They shimmer faintly in the dark like mica stirred by breath. For a moment, the light pulls again there, just beside your shoe. It slides, playful, then scurries off like a mouse made of glow. In temple records, it's often mentioned during purification rituals, especially when participants claimed visions or strange dreams the night before. A priest might say, the light wandered through his sleep and rearranged his truth, which sounds like a poetic way of saying, he woke up different. You blink, and it's gone. Or maybe it was never there. The city feels oddly restless tonight, like it's stretching in its sleep, and showed my brother's shadow when he stood behind me with the knife. I watched it from doorways, from rooftops, from temple stairs. And when it passed, they whispered, "Go safely, light without home. It's here to see, to wander, to remind you that light docility always belonged to the sky or the fire or the gods. Sometimes it just goes." Whether that's metaphor, hallucination, or the Mesopotamian version of security cam footage, we'll never know. This space feels oddly alive, though, like something circling just outside your vision. That's the signature of Enchar Saru. Don't find it. It finds you. Then it darts off before you can ask questions. Always alone, always at night, and almost always they don't come back. Or a warning about losing yourself in something that was never meant to be followed. One clay tablet ends with the phrase, "He saw the shimmer by the river's mouth, and the next day the sun refused his name." That is either poetic nonsense, and spoke their name into it backwards. It would carry a wish to the gods. 8. But if they spoke someone else's name, the light would carry a lie instead. Just imagine the petty sibling warfare that caused. "No, Marduk," she said your name, in reverse.
8.
And she wished you'd trip in the goat pen. Or that one hallway bulb at school that only glows when no one's around. Babylonians treated Enchar Saru with caution, sure, but also with a kind of amused resignation. It wasn't dangerous exactly, just unpredictable. Like a cosmic raccoon with a flashlight. You cross what used to be a plaza, now just stone patches and tilted columns. Their inscriptions barely legible. Mainstream historical fact? Ancient Mesopotamians had tales of flickering lights near city borders, especially after battles or during eclipses. These were not enemy torches, nor were they stars. They moved wrong. It's too fast, too low, too curious. Scribes described them as light without owner. Some suggested they were the breath of exiled gods, still drifting near the cities that abandoned them. Others claimed they were failed prayers, returning to wander. But something else does. That's awkward. And now for the fringe. There are a handful of texts, often half-burned or buried in private collections, that reference people chasing the wandering light, pass through a broken archway, and the space ahead opens into a narrow street perfectly aligned so the moonlight docility touched the center. Historians still argue whether Enchar Saru was atmospheric, possibly a mirage effect caused by heat and river, humidity, or whether it was tied to phosphorescent decay. But the Babylonians wouldn't have described it that way. There's even a court document, partial but telling, that describes a defendant claiming, "The light turned, you stop at what might have been an old well." And here's the quirky detail of the night. Some Babylonian children were told that if they caught the wandering light, you smile at the thought. And it's a gentle reminder. Not all ancient mysteries were terrifying. Some were just annoyingly mysterious, restless, curious, a little too clever. It's not here to bless or burn or cleanse. Still, the adults treated Enchar Saru seriously. You walk on now, deeper into the ruins, your path lit only by shifting moonlight and the occasional flicker of something not quite there. And Enchar Saru is part of that. The Babylonians knew this. They didn't try to control it. You pause now, letting your own shadow catch up to you. The shimmer has vanished. The world is calm again, but somewhere, just out of reach, the wandering light keeps moving. Looking maybe for you. The streets are narrower now. Shadows lean heavy, and the air carries that faint mineral scent, stone warmed by the day and cooled by the weight of stars. You move slower, not out of fear, just instinct. It means exactly what it sounds like. The kind of light that stares back. This is the light that catches you off guard, that makes your spine straighten even when you're alone. Once, someone stood here at dawn selling clay beads or bitter herbs. Now, only the outline remains. But above the lintel, still half visible, is a carved eye. Not decorative, not stylized. Just an eye. Open. Watching. The kind of light that makes you double-check if someone makes behind. You then slowly realize it S in front of you. That's the phrasing. The belief was that once the light chose to look at you, your heart could be read by the gods. the kind of caution you feel in the pause between thoughts. Because the light here isn't flickering or chasing or soft, it's watching. Was it a real phenomenon caused by early mirrored architecture? Or simply a deeply internalized idea that light, when it hits certain surfaces just right, carried judgment? These weren't just metaphors for divine oversight. They were practical magic. They confessed. They hesitated. They changed their behavior. Just enough to catch the light and bounce it back into their faces. Being interrogated by a man holding a spooky rock mirror with the sun bouncing off it like a laser pointer of guilt. Courtroom drama, 1700 BCE style, might have evolved from earlier Sumerian ideas of mirrored souls where seeing yourself reflected, even faintly, meant the world acknowledged you. So maybe this wasn't about being watched, but about being seen. Not by gods, not by people, but by reality itself. It wasn't about vision, it was about presence. The message was clear. Even if no one else sees your lie, the light does. The eye's light lingers a little longer on your shoulder than fades. Not because anyone told them to, but because they felt watched. Something about it remembering dreams and mischief. In one version, a child steals honey cakes and blames it on a goat. Maybe warm or cool, harsh or soft. But to them, it was a whole language, a moral compass, a storyteller, a presence. But later that night, the light leans in and licks his tongue, and the lie slips out at breakfast. You can practically hear the tired parent's voice. See, the light knows. Should have just said sorry. It feels still, but not safe. There's a dull gleam to one of the stone walls, so faint you could miss it if you blinked. As you do, the eye light shifts. It doesn't disappear, just moves, like it's lost interest. Or maybe it finished reading you. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. A pale glow shaped not like a circle, but like an iris. As if the light isn't just bouncing, it's focusing. It wasn't merely light, it was a kind of awareness. Some even thought it could catch lies midair. Occasionally the light returns off a corner, a broken jar, a metal clasp half buried in sand. And each time, it holds your gaze a second longer than it should. Threatening, certain. A priestess in one poem whispers, "Let the eye light drink your breath. If you live, it is truth." Comforting, a deterrent. Be seen, they warned, and be careful. This is the Babylonian in Char. Oe ni the eye's light, and no, that's not poetic. Not the warm gaze of the sun, not the distant blink of a star. You brush your fingers along a cracked doorway. Mainstream historians note that the Babylonians placed symbolic eyes over thresholds, especially in temples, military outposts, and even public bathhouses. Anchar Oni was associated with more than just carvings, though. It was the name for a specific kind of light one that reflected off polished surfaces just so, mimicking the look of a watching gaze. Sometimes this was intentional, like in ceremonial mirrors or bronze plaques. Other times, it happened naturally. A sunrise glinting off a puddle, a blade, a soldier's shield leaning in the corner. You step into a small courtyard now, hemmed in on all sides. That's Enchar Oe, ni the light that sees you. There's a fringe inscription on a broken tablet from Sipper, which mentions a temple ritual where initiates were required to sit in total darkness, until the light blinked at them. And if the light never blinked, well, maybe you were just boring. Historians still argue whether Anchar Oani referred to an intentional optical effect or a psychological experience. Either way, the result was the same. People acted differently under this light. And here's the quirky part. Some Babylonian judges actually carried polished obsidian discs in court not to look into, but to angle toward defendants. Imagine that. Find a bench of sorts collapsed, weather-smoothed, but still horizontal enough to sit on. The Babylonians believed that Ensha Oani was the bridge between intention and truth. You stand again, brushing dust from your palms, and continue on through the narrow alleyways. But here's where the debate deepens. Some scholars suggest that Inchar Oani wasn't about divine judgment at all. It's kind of beautiful in a mildly unsettling way. There's also a scattered collection of lullabies, actual lullabies that warn children not to play in the watching light before bed. It's starting to make sense how many different kinds of light the Babylonians had. To us, light is light. You step out of the alley into a more open space, where the stars regain their grip on the sky. It's moved on. But it might still be watching. You walk beneath a colonnade now, or what's left of one tumbled columns like fallen soldiers in quiet formation. The stars above blink lazily, indifferent. But the ground here, it glows. Not bright, not eager, just steady. Like it's been glowing for a while and doesn't care if you notice or not. This is Inchar or Gouda the Earthlight. It's a kind of glow that doesn't come from the sky or fire or even torchlight. It rises. It lingers. It waits. No. This light came up through the soil after something significant happened. A birth. A burial. A betrayal. Or just as often a forgotten prayer. And it's old. It's like older than most gods old. Apparently, Enchar Urgatu made a sound like water whispering through stone. A geophysical anomaly. A metaphor? Or were they just very committed to their glowy ground? The glow lasted for 6 nights, and no plants grew there again. The temple, of course, claimed this was divine territory and promptly fenced it off. Not words, not visions, just presence. One line reads, "Her mother did not return." If Inchar Urgotu was present, it meant the earth still had unfinished business. Some even claimed to see little dancing lights near their doors at night, which they called leftover thoughts. Imagine your front yard subtly judging your life choices. But the ground lit gently near her ring. Now, is that grief-making metaphors? How specific? Hope he didn't have athlete's foot. The ground light has dimmed now. Maybe it never glowed. Maybe you imagined it. Or maybe you've just been here long enough that the light knows you're listening. Or is it a culture that believed memory wasn't in the mind but in the soil? Never let a public safety hazard go to waste when you can call it holy. Some theorize that ritual incense or fermented drinks may have altered perception, making the earth appear to shimmer. Others argue that it was a way for ancient people to speak of trauma, loss, and reverence without naming names. To light the ground instead of reopening wounds. It's not like moonlight. It's deeper, like the color of old gold rubbed thin with age. A low pulse in the ground, faint as breath. It's hard to tell, but the paving stones are more regular, more deliberate, and in one spot just when you see it again, that low pulsing sheen. Before major military campaigns, some would camp on earth they believed to be light-held, hoping the ground itself would offer omens. If the soil glowed or pulsed or whispered or just felt weird, then the campaign would proceed. If not, they'd sometimes cancel, because nothing ruins a war like disappointing dirt. It's like the land is breathing light, but only every few seconds. Not enough to light your way, just enough to remind you it's alive. That's the kind of detail a Babylonian priest would have obsessed over for days. The Babylonians believed that Inchar Urgatu was the light of the land remembering, not just glowing randomly. You move through the dust, and in one spot you notice a peculiar shimmer around your feet. It's warmed at like sun-warmed stone, but a subtle internal heat like a sleeping pet. Not hot, not cold, just aware. It's the kind of glow that doesn't care what you want from it. Just is. And if you're lucky, it tells you something. Or not. It's not your therapist. It's a kind of feeling you don't notice until you really stop. Until you let it be felt. Mainstream historical fact. Babylonian tablets from Nippur and your describe Enchar Urgatu appearing at sacred sites after rituals. It was often taken as a sign that the gods had marked the ground or left behind their favor. In some cases, its glow was used to justify moving temple boundaries. The earthlight knows where the holy ends. One scribe wrote, "With a smugness you can still feel through the cuneiform." One theory proposes that trace levels of uranium in riverbed clay could have emitted a faint natural glow under certain conditions. You know, casual radioactivity, Babylon style. And here's the strange part. Babylonian engineers, yes. They had those sometimes drilled small holes near temple foundations to listen for the light. Historians still argue whether this earthlight was caused by bioluminescent organisms in the soil, some kind of mineral luminescence, or just the vivid imaginations of priests with too much wine and not enough supervision. There's a story, half myth, half memo, of a gardener who dug too deep near a ziggurat and struck a light vein. You're now walking along what must have been a ceremonial path. There's a fringe Babylonian belief, not widely documented but whispered in fragments, that Enchar Urgatu was how the dead spoke. The quirky detail? Some superstitious families refused to build new homes unless the ground refused to glow. You pause now, crouch, and press your palm against the earth. This light, if you can even call it that, isn't for seeing. It's for knowing. And yet, Babylonian kings took it very seriously. One partially preserved decree reads, "No spear shall cross the river until the land shines beneath the left foot of the high priest." You stand, brushing grit from your knees. Historians continue to debate whether Enchar Ergatu was metaphorical, symbolic, or even psychedelic in origin. But to the Babylonians, it was simple. When the land remembered, it glowed. And when it forgot darkness, you take one last look at the stones around you. Just stone, now, still quiet, but maybe, just maybe, still remembering. Your path bends gently now, guiding you toward the river's edge, where the air smells of silt and faint salt and something else, maybe copper or time. The sky, stretched above you like worn linen, offers only the softest starlight. But you don't need it here, because the light is moving, not dancing, not flickering, flowing. This is in Charnuth, a river light, and it's the kind of glow that never holds still. It coils through the water like breath, shivers across waves, and feared them too. Rivers brought crops, but also floods, trade, but also thieves, and was dumb, but also monsters. In Enchar Nru, a particular shimmer pattern might mean war. A sudden flare of blue, the birth of a child. A long golden streak, the favor of Marduk. Or maybe someone just dropped a shiny spoon upriver. Interpretations varied. That was the soul of the river itself, what they believed the water showed only when it wanted to be heard. The river hums with insect wings and the soft slap of slow current. Some bathhouse attendants even charged extra for prophetic rinses. During river glow time, you sit there imagining a 3,000-year-old upsell pitch. Yes, it's 5 shekels more, but the river will tell you if your cousin's cheating you, which is impressive, considering how many books Babylonians crammed onto clay tablets. Seriously. One priest had an entire room devoted to dream interpretation texts. He might have had better luck just going for a swim, plus free soap. To the left, the light thickens briefly, like gold smeared across ink. To the right, it blinks just once, then vanishes. It's not on boats, not through clouds. But by becoming part of the river's light, an empty but the inside holds water. And in that small puddle, you see the river light again, coiled like a ribbon. Trapped, or terrifying, depending on your mood, not still. And the light continues to glide across an ancient sentence, half-spoken, never quite finished. At! It flickers because none of them meant just bright. Each one carried baggage, emotion, ritual, caution, awe, and Ashar and Ru. That was the light you couldn't trust, couldn't predict, but desperately wanted to understand. Pulses, then breaks apart when you lean closer. But part of it lingers in your mind, a soft shimmer on memory's edge. That shimmer? That was the presence of something immense, briefly brushing the skin of the world before diving back under. A pool. The Babylonians believed you could never own riverlight. You could borrow it, read it, fear it, but keep it. Never. And just beneath the surface, there it is. That strange glint that slithers sideways when you try to look at it straight. Some suspect it was tied to algae that glowed faintly under stress, a kind of freshwater bioluminescence. Others think the Babylonians simply needed the river to talk, and so eventually it did. Slippery, not because it hides, but because it never agrees to be caught. You step closer to the shore. Reeds lean inward, whispering their own little secrets. Babylonians adored rivers, revered them, depended on them. Silky. A current slides around your fingers, indifferent and eternal. If the light appeared strong and forward-moving, it was a good sign. The mud holds your prints for a moment, then the next step erases the last, just like the water, just like the light. If it was absent or reversed, someone would get spirit cleansed before the festivities. You know, just a little pre-party exorcism. The trade went poorly. Even in ancient times, people blamed their bad investments on weather and mysticism. Sorry I lost the oxen, but the shimmer was wrong. Totally normal. But as your skin breaks the surface, the light splits around it like oil pushed away from a drop. And for a second, just one, the light trails up your arm like a question mark. Mainstream historical records describe how priests and astrologers would watch the Euphrates at twilight. waiting for signs in the light on the water. But Inchar-Nru wasn't just divine mood lighting, it had rules. One law tablet from Larsa warns against crossing the river while the light curls backward. That's not poetry, it's literal. When the light on the water moved against the current, usually due to strange wind conditions, or tidal reflections, it was considered a bad omen. Sometimes even punishable if you ignored it and something went wrong. Imagine getting fined because you rowed during the glowy hour. You kneel at the edge now. Your hand dips into the water. It's cooler than expected. A fringe belief held that Inchar-Nru could read the future by touching the skin. Historians still argue whether Inchar-Nru was a real optical phenomenon, perhaps due to sediment, mineral runoff, or just how torchlight bends on a current. There is an old temple chant that repeats, "The river holds the truth too wide for books." You stand, watching the water stretch out like melted night. Some texts claim that Inchar-Nru was how gods traveled. Quirky side note. Wealthy Babylonian families sometimes hired professional river watchers to observe Inchar-Nru during weddings or childbirth. You wander along the riverbank now barefoot, your feet sinking slightly into soft, damp earth. In one preserved letter from a merchant to his brother, there is a complaint. Do not trust the priest's words, his river light was too early. You spot an abandoned boat, half sunk into the shoreline. Its hull is blackened, weather-worn. You're reminded this light never stays. It always moves. Even when caught in a bowl, a jar, there's something comforting about that. You step back onto the path. The river continues to flow, whispering in its 1,000 watery voices. It's easy to see now why they had so many words for light. You keep walking. The river fades behind you, the glow growing fainter with each step. A light that moves with you, but never for you. Now the air feels different, closer, denser, like you've walked into a hush. You've left the river behind, and your path winds gently upward. Not even a hill, really, but a rise. Just high enough to be noticed by stars and spirits. You catch your breath, though you weren't really winded. Then you see it not flickering, not flowing. Fixed. The final light. Inchar. Zamtha. Heaven light. Not the sun, not moonlight either. This is something subtler. The kind of light that just is, whether or not you're looking. It has no direction, no source. But the Babylonians believed it had purpose, one hymn fragment says. The light that fell before the stars learned to blink. It's a radiant silence that filled the void. And occasionally, the light they used to whisper messages across dimensions. No big deal. Some say it was an early form of proto-theological quantum theory. Others say it was just a poetic term for ambient starlight. Either way, the effect was the same. It made people feel watched but not judged, illuminated but not exposed. In the mythic layering of light, Inchar-Zank was the divine constant, the soft, invisible illumination that gods used to see us even when we couldn't see them. As if all other lights made things visible, but this one made them make sense. No glow, no heat, just presence. The Babylonians wouldn't have called it relaxing, necessarily, more like clarifying, because each one served a different purpose. One to guide, one to warn, one to reveal, one to remember. In the soft breeze tracing ancient syllables across your skin, you finally feel it. The last of the 7. Not urgent, not insistent, just constant. Now your breath is slowed. Your body knows it's time to let go. The lights, each one, have faded gently behind. Use them flickering out like candles. Others drifting back into the soil, into the river, into the silence. Your shoulders release the last of their weight. Your jaw softens, even your fingertips. Those curious wandering things are still now. To simply be. Just memory becoming part of the land. The dust of Babylon, the breath of priests, the shimmer of forgotten rituals, all of it, drifting far behind. One to whisper, one to bless. And this one, eyes upward. The sky opens above you like a lidless eye. And for the first time you notice it. The light that doesn't move. Let the dark above be your vault of stars. Let that final glow, the one without source or shape or sound, keep watch over you. Gentle and still, until morning comes. Or smelled terrible. The text isn't clear. It's simply there, soft and endless and slow, like the space between heartbeats when the world is quietest. The light that doesn't need fire or moon or motion. It's the stillness between all other brightnesses. The space where glow becomes knowing. They'd call on Ian Charzonk to clarify hidden guilt or highlight unspoken truths. Divine approval. If not, maybe sit farther from the wine next time. Other times, they just squinted dramatically and claimed divine insight. On the 8th night, he reportedly began glowing faintly himself. But either way, he was declared touched by Enchar Zomp and recruited as a temple oracle, probably with a nice dental plan. Sometimes that meant watching how the accused reacted when sunlight hit them. Palace artists claimed to embed crystals, likely clear quartz or calcite, as ceremonial gear, not for decoration, but so the light of heaven would choose its path. That meant if the sparkle hit your robes just right during a royal banquet, the light that doesn't ask you to see anything just reminds you you're being seen. It's hard to say which method was more reliable. They described it as a tingling, a warmth with no heat. Maybe they were just sleep deprived. Or maybe they knew something we don't. After all, they tracked Venus with stone tablets and could predict eclipses better than some early modern Europeans with telescopes and powdered wigs. Mainstream historical records, especially those from Sippar, the city of the sun god Shamashra Zompk, as the background glow of judgment and order. This light didn't just reveal, it decided. It was said to shine equally over kings and beggars, exposing truth without mercy, you know. Kind of like that one bathroom mirror with brutally honest lighting. The stars glitter above you, easy, distant, but endless. There's no torch in your hand, no lamp at your feet, and yet you see, not brightly, not clearly, but enough. In court cases, some priests invoke this celestial light during trials. You pause atop the rise. The Babylonians believed Inchar Zomp was the first light ever created before flame, before fireflies, before dawn. Quirky detail? Babylonian astronomers sometimes claimed they could feel an Archar Zamped on their skinny, especially on clear nights after long vigils. There's a scholarly debate still simmering whether Anchar Zamped was meant to represent divine consciousness itself, or if it was more akin to the fabric of reality. You lie down now, back against the cool earth. There is a story half lost to rain-damaged tablets about a shepherd who lay under this light for 7 nights straight, fasting, waiting for a sign. Even the king's crown was said to reflect Anchar Zomp in a particular way. It doesn't call for attention, doesn't need you to name it. You close your eyes, letting this non-light wrap around you like a quiet breath. There's something fitting about ending here. After torchlight and temple glow, after river shimmer and ground luminescence, what's left? And maybe that's the real reason the Babylonians had so many words for light. As you lie there, starlight pooling in the hollows of your collarbones, the kind of light that doesn't tell you what to do, just lets you rest. But this light, the one from the heavens, the one that never blinks, remains. You feel your limbs sinking a little deeper now, like warm sand being shaped by sleep. And maybe, just maybe, the ground remembers you now too. That faint earthlight we talked about. Maybe it stirs when you exhale. Maybe your thoughts settle into it like dew. Nothing loud, nothing grand. Let the soft hum of your fan mimic the river's drift. Sleep now. The story is over. The lights are all in place.